Hello everyone, and welcome back to Nier Reincarnation. I'm G, and we have had a lot more in the way of records dropped recently. Little stories, both in terms of quests and hidden stories and yada yada yada. So I figured that we would spend some time catching up on those. We still have a whole bunch of the dark character stories over here, the Yikes character stories, because we have only done Gale, Uhhhhhhhhhhh, Lavanya, and Fio. But we also have a whole bunch of event stories and a whole bunch of extra ones. So, for now, I'm going to stick with the extra stories, just so that we can, sort of get those out of the way. So, I think I'm going to start with Uhhhhhhhhhh. We're going to go just through the characters that I like, because we did Saryu, and now we're going to do Uhhhhhhhh. Assassin's Excerpt. Fallen leaves swirl in the wind, kicking up dust devils in the courtyard. Though they steal my attention, the bright sunlight causes me to shut my eyes. When I open them again, I find the leaves have drifted to the children's feet. They pay them no mind. Perhaps they do not even notice. I watch them dance. It is hypnotic. Beneath the open sky, behind a wall topped by ominous red spikes, children yell as they scamper to and fro. Their movements are clumsy due to their immature limbs and musculature, but their energetic voices still echo across the sky. Passers-by outside the wall hear them and smile, remembering the halcyon days of their own childhoods. But the passers-by do not see what they are holding. Each child carries a deadly steel blade in one hand. They stand in a triangular formation so they might better observe one another. It is the custom of this family for even the youngest child to wield true steel at all times, save when sparring one another. This is because we must think of our weapons as an extension of our own bodies. All for the sake of our Lord. I sigh and look away. A man who had been standing separate from the children meets my gaze and bows. Their teacher, most likely. I respond with a brief wave of my hand. The family I now lead is an organization of killers. We are killers who support our Lord's rule from the shadows, having polished our skills for decades so we might ensure that his rule is absolute. We are comprised of many generations of blood relatives, as well as supporting staff. Though I hear tell the family was not always so large, it has now grown in size for various reasons. The expansion of territory, securing power for wartime, family feuds, preserving secrets, and so on. The head of the household receives direct orders from our Lord, while day-to-day management of the organization falls upon the previous Lord, my father. But his work is not unrelated to my own. Indeed, I hold a position where I have great sway over the futures of our young charges. The children are training in assassination. The daggers at their belts and in their hands are common things found throughout our world, and nowhere near as suited to our work as a concealed weapon. But there are times when an assassin cannot choose their weapon. Perhaps they are not yet skilled in stealth, or perhaps their preferred weapon breaks during a mission. This lesson teaches them how to act in such unfortunate situations. We have no choice in this. Children will give their all to their cruelest regimens precisely because they are young and innocent. Their eyes do not yet perceive the weight of life, and this leads them down a path most dark. It reminds me of my own past, of the day I first took the life of another, and if I close my eyes, I can still see my blood-soaked hands. The horizon blurred, almost as if I was viewing it after a long and restless night. I stood in place, staring down at a pair of hands slick with scarlet. I had just killed someone, and this act would be a part of me forever. I remember the day I came of age. Even though I would one day inherit our house, I was given a wooden sword and told to drill with one of my father's many subordinates, no different than any other child in a samurai family. My training was merciless, and I endured it day and night without pause. At that time, I pretended not to notice the cheerful sounds of children playing beyond the walls. In hindsight, I realized my instructor's irritable demeanor and harsh methods were not because he wished to see me succeed, but because he hated my being heir to our house. In one particularly brutal session, I watched the man's swordsmanship closely before slipping through a gap in his swing. But a child's meager strength and short limbs are no match for an adult. Only after we quash our fundamental disadvantages can we first stand on equal footing. The nearness of my tutor invited a mistaken judgment. No one in our family flounders when another enters their circle, and my instructor quickly shifted his pivot foot and continued to swipe at my legs. Frantic, I struck his kneecap with the handle of my wooden sword in an attempt to halt his momentum. My plan was to slip past him to the left, then send the blade into his side, but as I readied my next move, I saw him adjust the grip on his sword out of the corner of my eye. It was too early to step out of the way, but too late to dodge. Almost without realizing it, I grabbed the man's clothing in an attempt to body slam him, but a child's grapple means nothing without momentum. All the move did was bring my physical disadvantage to the fore. Instantly regretting my mistake, I prepared myself for pain. But rather than deliver a blow, my instructor froze. I followed his widened eyes and turned to see the former head of my family, my father. He greeted my instructor, who sheathed his wooden sword and kneeled, then turned his attention to me. "We must speak. Come." My father brought me to the parlor and told me I was to be given a mission. While the news came as a shock, the cold weight in his tone said all I needed to know about the nature of the task. "I wish to acknowledge my daughter's maturity," he said. "Before the week is out, you will choose a target and bring me their head. But know this, the value of the target determines your own worth." These words caused me to lift my head. While I had expected many possible missions, that had never been one of my considerations. Yet now I had 5 days to eliminate someone whose death might prove beneficial to my father and our house. My mind reeled. Unable to reply, I bowed deeply and exited the room. The question of which life was the correct one to take held me tight, almost as if I had been seized and bound in a great and weighty chain. If it was ever acceptable to measure the worth of another's life, who would have the right to do so? Even if it is not acceptable, people still seek their own worth. It is as though the value of one's life is fixed. I was given my first order to kill when I was yet young. The trial would serve as a display of our abilities and involved us killing a target of our choosing. I was allowed to venture into the city under supervision of people from the family in order to search for a target. While I was sometimes left the house for espionage missions, such instances had been rare. This was the first time I was able to act in search of my own accord. As I moved through the city, I recalled something my instructor said to me before I left on my mission. Anyone can be killed if they are considered weak, even you. His mission was clear. If I did not put my life on the line to satisfy my father, he would take it without any hesitation. But I was so young, and the hesitation of taking a life combined with the pressure I felt in the face of my trial was enough to drive me into the proverbial corner. And that fear bound my shadow to my house. How ironic. As I searched for my target, I did my best to hide my trembling fingers in my fists. I wandered the boundary between light and dark, weaving the narrow alleyways between buildings as I tried to make my decision. It was as far from true freedom as one could be, yet I mistook it for such in those early days. Removing the samurai will be more than enough to display my strength. But I have never killed before. Can I do it? That man drowns in unearned riches. His death will be easy and beneficial. But is that enough to satisfy my father? That merchant has earned great ire from the townsfolk. Many would want him dead. Is it my place to make such a judgment? My thoughts came to a dead end. I repeated the same actions over and over until the very last day, staring for hours at the boundary between light and dark. When that last day came, I grew impatient. Where did I even go? I know I pursued my target with fevered desperation and a kind of awkwardness, and eventually my hesitation led me back home, where I stared at the weapons along the wall of my room, and shivered. Who can I kill? Who is the right candidate? Who is all right to kill? How should I kill? When should I kill? Where should I kill? In the end, perhaps the answer is for me to kill me. My family-made children determine the value of a life, putting their very selves at risk in the process. Indeed, that was likely the purpose of the exercise. Will their sensibilities break under the weight? Will their spirits shatter under the pressure? Can they still bring profit to the family? In the end, it taught me that hesitation in the face of a kill was unnecessary to those of my household. Perhaps it even served the purpose of destroying any worthless hopes and dreams. I greeted the dawn of the final day with exhaustion and anguish. I'd forgotten what it meant to be alive. When I finally looked down, I realized my hands were soaked in blood, my eyes clouded, and I found myself unable to hide my irritation. As such, I did not notice my fingertips relax and begin to draw slow patterns in the soft dirt below, almost as if this was the way things were meant to be. Bodies lay at my feet, their eyes lifeless, waxy. A blossom of brilliant crimson bloomed, its wretched vermilion petals scattered. As I looked down at my palm and saw a dim reflection of glimmering light, memory finally returned. I'd always wondered what was so different between the life I led within the walls and the lives of the children who lived outside it, but when I finally asked the question, it was far too late. That was the moment I killed a part of myself. My father gave me the mission and allowed me to choose my companions, so I selected my instructor and his younger brother. They had long been dissatisfied with our family and current lord, and since I would one day assume that position, I saw the mission as a chance to solve that most tired of problems. Perhaps I let my guard down in the process. I knew they schemed to use me to depose the current lord, and when I snuck into the manor under the curtain and shadows of night, they were so engaged in their plans they did not notice me. But as they continued to converse, I felt time growing short. Father will be pleased that I am ridding him of traitors. Alas, I did not bother to think of how I would kill them. Soon, thick sprays of blood flew through the moonlight. My father praised me when I returned with their heads. Though I took their lives in a cowardly ambush, he was pleased I had the backbone to kill people I knew personally. Thinking back, I'm sure it was a test. My father knew full well who the traitors were. Though I was now free from the trial, my life as a killer had only just begun. Afterward, I meticulously washed the blood from my cold hands and let them rest, folded as though in prayer, on my lap. But it was a fool's errand. Those hands would be soaked in blood countless times after that. No matter how I scrubbed and scrubbed and scrubbed and scrubbed and scrubbed, I could never cleanse the stains of murder. I could never walk a different path. And so I began to plan. I watch as the children devote themselves to their training. They have yet to learn of the outside world and know nothing of the circumstances of their existence. I lead this family now, and much as my father before me, I will likely shake them free of their reverie with a trial of blood and death. This is wrong. I know it to be so, but I have walked the path of a killer. Even if I were to cast it all aside and free them from this house, I know not if I could protect them from whatever the future holds. Perhaps they would only end up lifeless on the ground, just like those who plotted betrayal and met death by my own hands. Birds freed from their cage, dolls obtaining sentience. Where would they go? Would they travel? Do they even know such a thing is possible? And what of me? The past steals freedom, responsibilities steal freedom, the future steals freedom. The fetters of unending reincarnation have returned to me once again, and though I now have the power to choose, I have no solution at the ready. It is a riddle with no solution, and I hate it with all that I am. Home is a place for kin to gather. Kin is a concept created by people for the sake of others. They do not have wills of their own, they are but words, or so they are meant to be. Yet it seems those who never intended to find a home now find themselves amongst kin. Those who have abandoned a sense of individuality have come together under a singular belief and a roof have formed a bond more powerful than anything, and are more feared than anything. But she alone is different. She is the only one who stares off into the distance. She gazes beyond the walls that encircle the manor. From within the prison that is her home, she looks to a world somewhere beyond. There's one regular who often comes to my shop for a cup of tea and a plate of dango. She's always alone and always carries a katana, which tells me she must be of some significant standing. I'm not certain what she sees in my humble little establishment, but I appreciate the business. At first, I was terrified of her, for the crest on her clothing belongs to the manor known as the Den of Demons. It's an eerie place that normal citizens all steer clear of. But when I thought about it more, I realized the reputation came from nothing but hearsay. I felt shame at having judged someone based on rumors, and more ashamed still since she was a regular. So today, I made her more dongos than usual. This is my thanks for you being a frequent customer, I say as I hand her 2 plates piled high with dongos. She looks at me in shock and murmurs a brief thanks. I'm home. Welcome back. What's with the pot? I got these flowers after helping at the temple today. I was admiring them and they said they had way more than they needed, so they let me take some back. Well, how nice of them. You'll have to return and thank them later. It was nice, right? Anyway, I figured since they're letting me have some, I should get blossoms as close to red and blue as possible. What? Why? Because then they match her name, silly. Not sure I'd call that color scarlet, but I suppose the blue one could be indigo if you squint real hard. Oh, don't be a downer. It's the thought that counts. A peculiar air settled over the house known as the Demon's Den. Stalwart fighters who were the eyes and ears of the dreadful undefeated hound, and who at times acted as her fangs, gathered in the hall for a somber discussion. Though they had successfully vanished the successor of the opposing lord, the body had yet to be found. But more importantly, the woman who served as head of their house had gotten into a skirmish and cut down countless enemy samurai. She then dragged her injured self away and vanished like smoke, leaving only a bloodstain behind. If she were dead, well and good, but if she yet lived, it meant trouble. For she was their lord, the one who knew every secret of their house. She was a cure to all problems while within their walls, yet would be poisoned if she ever turned her back. We cannot permit her to live. Find her. End her. The metallic sound of blades loosening in scabbards echoed throughout the room in reply. Twilight. Fading sun shines through the smallest gap in the woman's eyelids. Her vision is crimson. Vaguely, she hears the faint drumming of a heartbeat. When viewed through a curtain of blood, everything looks the same. The woman stares at palms and footprints stained the same deep shade of red. She thinks back on that day, a dim one drowned in rain when she met the girl who bore the self-same scars, the girl she attempted to save in exchange for her own life. But, the woman thinks, have I not been using her life to save my own? And it's true. The life she thought she saved, she had merely claimed for herself. Alone, the woman is ashamed. She scolds herself, for she knows that when she sees the girl smile, she will forget the blood staining her own hands. One fateful day, the head of our house vanished. It was she who taught me how to live and how to kill in this cruel world of ours. Despite not being related by blood, I admired her as one might an older sister and referred to her as such, and it is she who made me into the devil I am today. The sudden absence of the one most skilled among us with a blade bettered my own status within our house, but plunged us into chaos and petty rivalries at the same time. There are even feuds regarding whether or not it is appropriate for those not of our head's bloodline to accept missions from our lord. How foolish it all is. I have no interest in authority or power, for neither did she, you see, and that it was allowed her to grasp the peerless strength she wielded. I searched for her even now, her beautiful pale skin stained with the blood of her enemies, her gaze as cold and dark as night turned upon the corpses of her felled foes. Oh, my dear sister, where have you gone? And I think on top of this, we will also include someone else's story. I'm thinking that we will include... No, not one of those. I think we should include Priet's, since we did Saryu's alone. I would like to do these in pairs, mostly anyways. But, I didn't, so let's do Priet's now. Every student in school is looking at the girl with wavy hair. She stands tall and bold on the podium as she receives a commemorative gold watch from a professor. She is my best friend. You use the knowledge and power you gained from your lessons to save the townsfolk from monsters. Everyone here is proud of your bravery. She stands at the center of the world as the students give her a generous round of applause. She shines under the auditorium spotlight. She is breathtaking, and she feels so distant. When the teacher dismisses us, students crowd around her and sing her praises, but I can't bring myself to approach her. After all, I'm a klutz. I'm stupid. I'm gloomy. I'm not the person for her at all. Dark feelings slowly consume me, and the next thing I know, I'm dashing out of the academy. With nothing better to do, I wander about the courtyard. It's not much of a courtyard, more like a forest with overgrown trees everywhere. But the crisp air helps me feel a little bit better. Sometimes all I want is to be in empty places like this. I suddenly spot a building I don't recognize beyond the trees. A shabby stone hut. It's too large to be a tool shed, but just big enough for someone to live inside. And since the door sits ajar, I decide to peek inside. It's dark and cool, with a faintly weird smell. I need to go further in to get a better look, so I step forward and... My, says a voice as candlelight blooms in the dark. It's not every day a student from the academy finds their way in here. Eep, is my clever reply. The speaker is an old man in a chair sitting next to a table with a small candle on it. He looks at me and lowers his eyes in a somber fashion. Welcome to the House of the Dead, dear girl. Welcome to the morgue. The morgue? Indeed, this is the resting place of all former students who die in battle and have no one to claim their remains. As he says this, my eyes adjust to the light enough for me to realize the room is filled with rack after rack of bodies. There are so many, and some of them are horribly mangled. To think they all used to go to this school. Poor things! There's no one left to mourn them. I'm terrified, but my feet are rooted to the spot. I know many students at the school are estranged from their families, including me and my two best friends. And I never once considered that after I finally leave the school, we would simply end up right back here, in death. As I roll this thought over in my mind, a loud thud rings out from beyond the candlelight's reach. I squeal again as I see a number of former students' corpses emerge from the dark. Their lifeless bodies stagger and groan as they march slowly towards us. Ah, but this is no good, says the old man. Run, little one! Run now! I do just that, burst out of the morgue and into the safety of the trees. I hear corpses groaning behind me, and the sound terrifies me. And yet, it almost sounds like weeping. Even after I returned to my room, I couldn't shake the image of the corpses I saw in the morgue. I tried to understand what had happened and how it was possible for them to be moving. And then, a thought sprang into my mind. Black magic. Black magic is a set of forbidden spells used by only a small number of mages. And while the price for their failure is great, they can accomplish things regular spells cannot. When we learned of black magic in our History of Magic class, our professor told us of a spell that enslaved deceased people to the will of the user, then went on to claim some opposing nations take great joy in wielding such horrid spells. The look on my best friend's face when she heard that was one of utter disgust. She shook with anger as tears spilled from her face, and balled her fists and swore to never engage in so foul an undertaking. Her tears were beautiful, and the sentiment perfectly her. She never could ignore those who suffered from injustice. If she had found the morgue instead of me, she wouldn't have run away and left them to their fate. Instead, She would have used her amazing spells to undo the black magic and permit the poor dead to have their rest. If only I could be like her. I remember how brightly she shone under the auditorium spotlight. She was so far above me, even the thought of reaching her was laughable. But if I could save the poor corpses in the morgue, if I could help people in need, well, maybe I could be one step closer to her. It was an idea powerful enough to inspire even a coward like me. The next day, I went in search of my other best friend. Though I hated to admit I couldn't take on the corpses in the morgue alone. I needed his help for my plan to work. Thankfully, he was easy to find. His spiky hair made him stand out almost as much as his talent. Upon tracking him down, I walked up and said, "You're good at dispelling magic, right?" "Better than any other student in this dang school, that's for sure," he said, with a wry smile and a charming air. "Can you dispel black magic?" "Never tried, but I know the theory behind it. Why do you ask?" "I need to dispel some, but I don't think I can do it alone. So I was wondering if you—" "Don't need to ask me twice," he cried with delight. After class, we went to the morgue. It lurked quietly in its corner, just like the day before, and as we stood before it, the same familiar fear came creeping over me. The inside retained its distinctive smell, and it was dark as a black cat at midnight. As we stepped across the threshold, we immediately heard a series of groans. When I raised my staff to light the room, we saw the dead were already shambling towards us. But my best friend wasn't worried. He immediately began to ready his anti-magic spell, humming quietly. I knew such things took time to prepare, so I worked to draw the corpses away by setting off little fireworks at their feet. It was a pretty pathetic display of magic, and nearly useless in a fight. But if I lost heart now, I'd never be able to consider myself equal to my best friend in the whole world, which is what gave me the courage to keep going. Suddenly, the corpse lunged at me, sending me toppling to the ground. I couldn't bear the thought of what was about to happen, so I shut my eyes and covered my head with my arms. But then, "Here we go!" My friend lifted his staff in the air, where it began to emit a brilliant golden glow. The spell quickly manifested around the corpses in an intricate circle, and as it grew brighter, he recited the final words of the spell. "Okay, we're good now." The light faded. The corpses were now motionless in the darkness of the morgue. Their faces looked to be resting peacefully, as opposed to the enslavement that had plagued them not moments before. But perhaps I just imagined that. Our magic has finally given them true rest. The next thing I knew, my companion was standing beside me. For some reason, it made me think of my other best friend. Together, we prayed from the bottom of our hearts that our senior mages could finally rest in peace. Noticing the light from the dispelling incantation, the guard approached the morgue. "I just can't believe it," he muttered. "2 students undoing that dark magic." After the shock of seeing corpses lying still as they were meant to be finally faded, he praised us for being brave, kind students. My plan had gone so well that I felt like I was in a dream. My best friend and I remained in high spirits as we walked back to the dorms. The old guard's words made me forget that I was usually weak and timid. Instead, for a moment, I felt like I was someone special, and I thought that maybe, just maybe, I'd grown one step closer to her. I wanted to tell her what happened today. Would she compliment me like my old guard did? I could feel my heart race as I pictured that happening, but my reverie was interrupted by my best friend. "I don't feel like going home yet," he said as he pointed to the tallest building on campus. "Want to go up the bell tower?" "Sure," I replied. We'd gone up there many times when we were younger, and I knew the views to be quite beautiful. High as I was on the thrill of victory, the idea of being above the entire world was something I was eager to experience again. We reached the top of the tower, which contained a bell that was enchanted to ring at certain times throughout the day. From there, we could see the forest that surrounded both our academy and the neighboring city of mages. "It's such a lovely view," I said. I'd been scared of the height when I first came up here, but it didn't bother me anymore. I felt like I was stronger in that regard, which only added to the joy that I currently felt. "Hey, listen," said my friend, as he sat beside me and stared out blankly into the distance. "I'm really glad your plan worked. I was a little nervous about it, but we made a pretty great team in the end." "I couldn't have dispelled that black magic on my own," I replied. "Thank you." He shook his head. "It's not what I mean. I think you're incredible for wanting to do it in the first place." "What?" "Those dead students were being forced to move and you wanted to save them. It was so kind, and I think that's a great quality for a person to have." I recalled how angry our other friend was at the prospect of black magic, even going so far as to shed tears over it. Now it felt like I and the boy beside me had grown even closer, which caused me to blush in delight. "We really are amazing together, huh?" he concluded. "I mean, we were friends right out of the gate, and now we've been together all this time. I don't think I've ever stopped thinking about you. My 2 best friends were so talented, so capable. They were always the ones helping me. Luck had brought me into their orbit, but I never felt like I belonged there. And hearing him speak to me now, I almost couldn't believe I deserved it." "I think it's destiny that we met," whispered my friend. He was always so relaxed, so calm. Now he seemed nervous. Do you think so? It can't be coincidence. And so I want us to be together for as long as we can. I'd only ever wanted the three of us to be together forever, and his words strengthened that resolve in me. Yes, I cried. Yes, I want that! His eyes snapped up to mine as a brilliant smile bloomed across his face. It makes me happy. It makes me so happy. I meant to return his smile, but before I could, his face was approaching mine, and I felt a tepid warmth pressing lightly against my lips. It was a morning like any other. I stepped into the glass room, rubbing my sleep-deprived eyes, and sat down next to my best friend. Morning, she said. I didn't see you at dinner last night. You okay? I nodded, which seemed to sate her curiosity. A moment later, a new chipper voice rang out. Morning, you two. You study for your magic history test? It was our other friend, the boy. Obviously, she replied. My review was perfect. Oh, sounds like it's on. Give it up, champ. There's no way you're beating me. Their back and forth was as flawless as always, and I was much too slow to keep up. It was odd how things seemed so normal. Oh yeah, we should check out the new general store once class is done today. He suggested this as if the idea had just come to him. My other friend shook her head. Sorry, I've got something to do, but you two go on ahead. My chest clenched when she said that. Oh no. As I floundered for something to say, she spoke up again. I'm obviously going to ask for a souvenir, though. I accepted this with a swallow and a nod, not wanting to upset her. The new general store was so full of things I almost didn't know what to get, and though I felt uncomfortable walking next to him, I still had fun picking out something for our other friend. But as we walked home, he said something that made me freeze in my tracks. I was glad she didn't come with us today. Why? I whispered. Because we could be alone. You feel the same, right? I knew what I was going to say next would wound him, but I absolutely had to clear up this misunderstanding before it went any further. I'm sorry, I can't be with you. There has to be someone out there who's a better match than me, than me. My friend was silent. When I finally summoned the courage to look at him, I saw him smiling faintly, which was not at all what I was expecting. He really should be more confident, you know. What is he saying? I don't understand. You're the perfect partner for me. What? Still, it's cute when you worry like that. He chuckled at this, then opened his eyes wide. Oh hey, I have a present for you. He reached out and placed a flower-shaped pin in my hair. I flinched in surprise and jerked back, but he leaned forward and whispered into my ear. What, you thought I was going to kiss you? We'll save that for some other time. His eyes belonged to a stranger. His gaze felt sticky as it moved up and down and across my body, and it took everything I had not to vomit on the spot. It reminded me how no matter how many times I'd rinsed out my mouth recently, I still couldn't scrub the feeling from my lips. No. His whisper played in my ears over and over and over, and... No, I hate this! I hate it! Every place he touched me was covered in filth. Every glance caused my hair to stand on end. I'm gross, I'm dirty, I'm disgusting, I hate it! I hate it, I hate it, I'm going to be sick! Took a pair of scissors and jammed them into my bed over and over. By the end of it, my room was a disaster and my throat raw from screaming. But I still felt no better. Why? If things went bad between the two of us, what would happen to me and her? Oh, but I knew. She'd take his side. Of course she would. And then we wouldn't be friends anymore. I don't want this! I was a fool to think I'd gotten closer to her after releasing the corpses in the morgue from that curse. I'd been happy in that moment, but now it felt so very, very, very long ago. I grabbed the flower pin and threw it against the wall as hard as I could. When I pictured how things would go in the days to come, I began to sob as an ocean of tears raged down my cheeks. Do you know the tale of the horrible, ugly monster that lives in the deep, dark wood? The one that killed 100 mages? What sort of terrible form does it take, you ask? Well, they say it covers its entire body with cloth, and that no one has ever seen its face. Goodness, it looks like me! Like Mama! Oh, you! This white sheet is fashionable, I'll have you know. But no matter how you try to hide your own inner ugliness from others, you'll never be able to hide it from yourself. And if you never face that part of you, you'll never find salvation or an escape from it. I wonder if the poor dear will ever realize that. This could turn you into a witch too. Give the incantation a spin and summon the spirit. 1. When the moon is full, open the window and fill your chosen room with fresh air. 2. Cleanse yourself thoroughly in the bath and wear your favorite clothes. 3. Once you are prepared in body and mind, lay a clean handkerchief on the floor and set a polished mirror atop it. 4. Stare intently at your face in the mirror. 5. Solemnly repeat this incantation. Apollo Carosteral, Apollo Carosteral. I bid my true friend to show themselves. 6. At that moment, the image in the mirror will take on the form of a spirit. 7. The spirit will be a good friend and always protect you. Stop immediately if you begin to feel sick. If the spirit doesn't appear right away, keep at it. Be patient. Yo, listen to this. I saw the weirdest thing yesterday. A big monster in a white sheet. It was walking around outside all night. No way! Prove it! I swear it's true. It was dragging around this big sack and rubbing its eyes. I think maybe it was crying? Actually, my mom once told me about a monster that brings disaster and another monster that brings happiness. Both of them wear white sheets, but the one that brings disaster is supposed to have the ugliest face in the world. Huh, I wonder which one I saw yesterday. Maybe I'll catch it next time and see. Haha! The voice was too loud for the library, and it annoyed me. Hey, have you heard the library rumor? Which one? There are over 20 or something. Nuh-uh, there are over 100. They giggled as they talked, which was even more annoying than the volume. I furrowed my brow lightly as it continued. The one I'm talking about is the good luck for pledges. Never heard of that one. Yeah, so you carve your name and the partner you want on the edge of the bookshelf at the very back of the library. One of the older students did it, and the next day she made a pledge with the person she always wanted. Shelf at the very back of the library? Which one do they mean? If I etched my name and her name on its face, could we really? Even after the noisy girls left, I had a hard time concentrating on my books. I went a little deeper into the woods than I usually do for our herb gathering assignments, and now I've lost my way. As if I needed this today, especially with so many other students having gone missing lately. As I wander, I come across what looks like a ruin. It's a dreamy and beautiful place, and my unease quickly melts into joy as I step inside. Suddenly, I'm overwhelmed by the stench of rotting flesh and an absurdly large swarm of insects. Among the chaos, I see the scattered bodies of students who wear the same uniform as me. Shocked, I leap backwards and collide with a large mirror. The enormous shadow within lets fly a fearsome howl as it brings its fist down upon me. For some reason, it strikes me as being so very sad. I see people emerging from the shop and hide in the shadows. Y'all know how to get a woman to like you? Hooey, I know you know, because your wife was the prettiest thing on two legs back when she was young. Sure was. She wouldn't even look at us back then, so what in the hell did you do? Their words are inarticulate. They cackle like animals. But my anticipation remains sky high. There's a flower that glows red. One what only blooms on the night of a new moon. Pluck it, put in some alcohol, and give it to the girl you like. And when she's drunk and you're pretending to look after her, blink and blink. Over her, blink. Hell, last time I did this, the girl ended up wanting me. That's right awful. God, but you're just terrible. Though the conversation was difficult to listen to, I knew they were speaking about magical pharmacology. Once I see they're gone, I quietly poke my head out. If I use that technique on her, maybe she will finally pursue me. And only me. And I think that this is a pretty good place to cut it. Well, there were some implications in both of those stories that I did not expect. Huh. Gonna have to sit with those for a while. But, next up, I think I will be doing some more of these, and then probably some more dark character stories after that. But for now, thank you all so much for following my playthrough of Nier Reincarnation, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye now.